Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لَفَقِيهٌ وَاحِدٌ أَشَدُّ عَلَى الشَّيْطَانِ مِنْ أَلْفِ عَابِدٍ. A single faqih is harder on shaitan than 1,000 worshippers. What it means is that it's harder for shaitan to deal with one faqih than dealing with 1,000 worshippers. He can be successful in causing deviation to 1,000 worshippers who are sincere worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than to be successful with a single faqih. Why is that? Because shaitan devises his schemes to deviate people. He's always planning, and he works very hard to design his schemes, design his plans to mislead people, misguide people, and deviate people from the straight path. But majority of the people will not identify his traps. Majority of the people will not be able to recognize the traps of shaitan. Majority of the people, as a matter of fact, may consider something that is detested in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is forbidden in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a good deed. And they may be doing it on a large scale. People may be doing something that they think is a good deed, is a righteous act, but in reality it's a sin in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A clear example of that is bid'ah, an act of innovation in deen, in matters of religion. Someone might be doing an act of bid'ah thinking that it is only a good deed, when in reality they may be violating the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will be committing a sin. For example, we perform 3 rak'ah of Salatul Maghrib. Every single day we perform 3 rak'ah of Salatul Maghrib. So now someone wakes up one day and he starts thinking about the wisdom, and maybe he could improve something. So he comes up with the idea that why don't we just make 4 rak'ah? Just add 1 rak'ah. Instead of 3, just make 4 rak'ah. We're just adding 1 rak'ah, which is salah. So instead of doing 3, let's start doing 4 from today. So now, not only he lost the righteousness in that, but he ends up committing a sin for adding something into religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already completed. Adding something that is already part of the deen is actually an act of aggression, an act of transgression. So now, it's harder for shaitan to deal with the faqih, because faqih will be able to see through an action, see through even the intentions and the plans of shaitan, and he will be able to decode that very, very quickly, and he will be able to save people from the plots of shaitan. He will be able to tell people, no, don't do this. You will end up losing the straight path. You will end up going astray. You will end up committing sin and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, disobeying the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. An ordinary person, a layman, will not be able to do that. But a faqih will be able to see that long before people will be able to see the consequences of that. And he will be able to warn the people, and he will be able to save the people. Now, who is a faqih? Faqih is someone who has an in-depth understanding of religion, an in-depth understanding of Quran, an in-depth understanding of the Sharia, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the correct understanding. If someone developed an in-depth understanding in a deviant way, in an Orientalist way, in an imperialist way, or in a way that is not in compliance, in conformity with the understanding of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, then that is also deviation. That was also done by shaitan, and shaitan succeeded on that person. So a person who has an in-depth understanding of Quran and Sunnah is considered a faqih. Now, how common are the fuqaha in the world? Interestingly, fuqaha are not very common. Not every alim, not every scholar is a faqih. That much should be understood and recognized. Not every scholar who graduated even from a seminary, even from a madrasa or from an Islamic institution of higher education is a faqih. You do not qualify to become a faqih just by graduation. Yes, you attained a level of education that qualifies you to be an instructor and be a guide, be a mentor, be an imam, but it does not elevate you to the level of faqih. If we were to look at the ratio between someone who's a faqih and someone who's just an alim, so a faqih obviously is someone who is alim, but he's above the level of ilm. He's reached that level of skill, expertise, that he's able to have an in-depth understanding. So if we were to look at the ratio, I would say probably 1 in 1,000 ulama is a faqih. Not 1 in 1,000 Muslims, 1 in 1,000 ulama. That's a very conservative ratio. More likely, maybe 1 in 10,000 is a true faqih. So if you look at the number of ulama that are in the world, if there are 1 million ulama in the world, the number of fuqaha is maybe 1,000 or maybe 500 or less than that, because it requires a lot of training with the senior scholars. It requires a lot of companionship and learning from the senior scholars. Now, all these imams that we talked about on Fridays, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi'i, they were all fuqaha. But how many fuqaha are there, historically speaking? How many do we know? And even though there were many fuqaha who had reached that level, but none had reached the level of acceptance that these 4 fuqaha had reached. And they were all revolutionary in the sense that they were able to develop such methods and such rulings from Quran and Sunnah that are able to guide us until the end of times, inshallah. So that's why one faqih is harder on shaitan, according to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, than 1,000 worshippers, because shaitan is unable to defeat one faqih, and he's unable to challenge one faqih, and he's very capable of misleading and misguiding 1,000 people very easily. Wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.